Hello, wonderful subscribers. My name is Susan, and I'll bring to you a short story. Now, the story is reasons why God never forgave the Amalekites. Amalekites were a nomadic nation, descendants of Amalek, the grandson of Esau. We all know that God is full of mercy and forgiveness. Yeah, but this one nation, Amalekites, he never forgave. And these Amalekites were wicked, and they liked to attack the sick, elderly, and defenseless, and pregnant women and children. And this was during the Moses time when Israel were in the wilderness. Now, the decree was issued by God in the scriptures that this race were to be eradicated from human history. Not to take them as prisoners, no mercy, just kill them all. Now, so I have to backtrack after the exodus from Egypt to get the full picture of these happenings for a better understanding. Now, Egypt was then the superpower of that known world. These Egyptians were very advanced in military and economy, and we know that a god of a nation of slaves publicly defeated them. Now, there were the 10 plagues, the crossing of the Red Sea, and we know that the Egyptians' military was swallowed by the Red Sea. This news shocked every surrounding nation in the Near East, and the Bible records it like this. The Canaanites heard, and their hearts melted and trembled. The Moabites became paralyzed with terror when they heard this news. The people of Philistine trembled. You see, all the nations who heard this news understood that the God of Israel was powerful, and this God was in the midst of the Israelites as they journeyed across the wilderness. And this God was not to be put to test. Okay? These Amalekites were the only nations not afraid, and they marched to the desert to pick a fight with God's people. But their fight was not a face-to-face compact with the able men of Israel, but instead they circled behind the column like predators and separated the weak from the rest of the people. Yeah? And remember, it's a very long column of 2 million people who had no weapon to defend themselves. Yeah? Deuteronomy chapter 25 verse 17-18 records these happenings explicitly. That these Amalekites did not have fear of God, and they had heard the miracles of God when in Egypt, and when they left Egypt, Amalekites looked at this evidence and rubbished it and decided not to fear God, and they marched. The style of attack was not a military engagement. It was like a predatory one, and a terrorism at play, being aimed at the elderly, sick, pregnant women, children, and these Israelites had no training in warfare at all. They had just left Egypt. Remember this. You see, these Amalekites were a defiant race against the God of Israel, and they knew it. Yeah, the Amalekites attack took place in Exodus 17, verse 18, and looking back at verse 7, this attack just took place immediately afterward, when at a place called Rephidim, and there you read the Bible carefully. If you read the Bible carefully, you discover that these Israelites were quarreling with Moses and questioning whether God is actually present with them, saying, "Is the Lord amongst us?" And that attack happened in the very next verse. Yeah. The Amalekite spirit never attacks when a person is strong, never attacks when a person's faith is strong or clear-minded. Amalekite spirit likes to ambush when a person is in doubt of God. And so here we see the attack took place at a place called Rephidim. Now you see in chapter 17 verse 14 God's response to this attack immediately. And God makes a declaration. Tell Moses to write it down as a memorial, to rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, that he will utterly blot out the memory of the Amalekites from heaven. And then when we look at verse 16, God makes an oath. He swears by his own throne, God, will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. So Amalek was to be erased totally. And we see 400 years passed. The wilderness generations also passed. Joshua did fight these Amalekites and partially subdued them, but he never did blot them out. Judges' time passed. Yeah, and then the Israelites demanded for a king, and God gave them a king of the Benjamin tribe. So here I want to fast track forward to 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 3 now, whereby the word of the Lord comes through Samuel to King Saul, and it was a directive to strike the Amalekites, destroy everything, kill all women, children, livestock, and live, and he meant all. Now look at it carefully. This was a 400-year-old verdict of Exodus 17 being handed down to a man who held authority, had a powerful army to execute the verdict of God. It is recorded that Saul had 210 soldiers and Israelites won this war, but King Saul compromised and spared the king called Agag and the best of the stocks. So if you read 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 12, Saul goes to Carmel, sets up a monument in honor of himself. So we read that Saul did not execute the order in full. Secondly, spared the demonic king. Thirdly, honored himself. So when Samuel arrives, Saul says, I have accomplished the commandment of the Lord. Then Samuel says, then what is this bleating of sheep in my ears and the lowing of oxen? And straight away another verdict is delivered to Saul. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he also rejects you from being king. And it's recorded that Samuel hacked Agag to pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. Not executed, not put to death, hacked to pieces. Samuel understood that what Saul did not understand, and that King Agag was a cancer, and no one negotiates with a cancer, not even a root of it. He was not to keep a demonic king as trophy. But it was too late. A bad seed had been planted by this event, and the seed shows itself up after 500 years to come. Now, if I may, I will go forward and say when Saul went to fight the Philistine, it is recorded in first book of Samuel chapter 31, and you read 1 to 13, it records he was wounded by arrows and bleeding. He asked his armor bearer to run him through with the sword so that the enemy do not capture him alive. The armor bearer refused, so Saul fell on his own sword and was dying alone, bleeding. And this battlefield, a scavenger found him. This scavenger sees that Saul is not completely dead, and he deals the final blow. And once Saul was dead, he stripped Saul's armor from him and takes that the armor and the royal crown to David. David asked this scavenger where he comes from, and the man answers David that I am an Amalekite. Shocking, this was exact. The enemy Saul refused to destroy, comes back to stand over Saul, bleeding body, strips him, took the crown from him, and Saul did not die at the hand of the Philistine, but at the hand of an Amalekite. The people God ordered him to blot out of human history. Now, this gives us a lesson in that the thing we refuse to kill will not stay where you left it, but it will grow and grow in the dark, and it will come back to take what you value most. Always remember that the sin you spare today will not thank you for your mercies in future. As we all know, that after that David became king, and his son Solomon built a temple, and the kingdom split into north and south tribe, and the north, which they were taken away by the Assyrians in captivity, and the south, which is also that one, Jerusalem stood, but later on fell to the Babylonians, and the people of God were taken into exile 70 years. Yeah, and the Babylonians fell to the Persian Empire, and the Persian became the most powerful empire in that known world at that time. Now, A lot of children were born in the captivity era, also died, and another generation of Israelites grew to replace them. And these ones never remembered what their forefathers had experienced. And during this period, we find out the Amalekites were never mentioned in the scripture. So the soul
I didn't understand that.
Saul and Haggag's story faded away, and the world forgot about Amalek. The seed that Saul's disobedience planted was in the ground, silent and dark, and patiently waiting to spring up to surprise. Centuries passed, then that silence broke, and it did not break quietly, and it did not announce itself. That dormant curse came back, not for a tribe or village or military outpost. It came back for every single Jewish man, woman, child, and on the face of the earth. It appeared with a legal degree, backed with a full administration and the military authority of the greatest empire known to the earth at that time. The Persian Empire was very powerful at that time. It was at its highest point, controlling 40% of the global population. Do you see this? Every road, every tax collector, every soldier, every governor in the 40% of the human world was answerable to one ruler. And a person had just convinced this great ruler to sign a death warrant which had every Jewish name on it. This evil spirit power in the Amalekite had climbed up to an influential position in the corridors of Persian Empire. Then it struck with the empire behind it and a royal seal on the paperwork. When a person looks back at the time of King Saul, no one, not even King Saul, thought he was dealing with a military enemy. Yeah, King Saul had no understanding that the seed he refused to finish off in the desert come 1000 BC would spend 500 years growing roots deep enough to wrap round the throat of the entire civilization and target the Jewish people. So the seed of Haggag became awake, and when it opened its eyes in the courts of Persia, it was looking at the bloodline that would produce the Messiah. But God never loses track of anything, and the book of Esther opens in the courts of the Persian king Ahasuerus. And into that court walks a man who became very dangerous, and his name is Haman. He had become the most powerful official in the Persian Empire, second to the king. So here we see Haman in the king's is the king's advisors. He has resources and authority, and worst of all, ambition to translate personal grievances into imperial policies. And he has one hatred for a specific Jewish man named Mordecai, who refuses to bow for him. So let's fast track forward to Esther chapter 3 verse 6, and it records, but he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, so as they had made known to him the people of Mordecai, Haman sought to destroy all the people of Mordecai throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. This verse simply means when he knew that Mordecai's people were Jewish, he decided to destroy them all, and this was definitely a genocide to an entire race in that time and period. Now, when we read Esther chapter 3, verse 1, we get to see that Haman was an Agagite, a direct descendant of a king Agag. This was the king that Saul kept alive as a pet. Remember, 500 years, the evil root he refused to kill had now grown up in the dark, produced a man standing in the right hand of the powerful king who had put a genocide decree in motion. The decree was a statement to go out through every province in the Persian Empire at a specific date. Every Jewish man and woman and the child is to be killed, not displaced, not enslaved, but killed, and all the Jewish possession to be plundered by the person carrying out the execution. This order is sealed with the king's ring, and in those periods, under Persian law, a royal decree sealed with king's rings cannot be revoked. It had a powerful machinery of the empire behind it. Now you see, if this decree became successful, all the Jewish in the Persian Empire will be killed, and the tribe of Judah is amongst them. Now, as I wrap up, if And if the tribe of Judah is eradicated, then the bloodline of King David is cut off. And if this bloodline cut off of the genealogy line of David, the one in the book of Matthew chapter 1, which traces to Abraham through David to the husband of Mary, mother of Jesus, is cut off as well. And this meant Jesus would not be born. Now, so here you see God was not being cruel in the book of 1 Samuel 15. God was looking across entire history, and he saw that 500 years to come, he was issuing a verdict to tell Saul to blot this tribe, because the bloodline would one day stand in a Persian palace with a pen and paper and make a decree to erase the Messiah from human history. So God's command to destroy the Amalekites completely was not harshest moments, but was a merciful act towards humanity. The severity towards one nation was grace towards every nation. That's that ever needed salvation in Jesus. And let's look at who God used to stop Haman. Esther chapter 2 verse 5. God uses Mordecai, the Jair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjamite from family of Kish. Now, I hope you can see that this is the exact same tribal family as King Saul, who was son of Kish, Benjamin tribe. God looked at Saul's failure and raised up a man from the same bloodline, from the same family, to act as the gap that Saul's disobedience had opened up. Saul's same family, same enemy, 500 years. Mordecai did not spare Haman. Esther did not negotiate with the degree, and the Haggite line was cut off. And if we look on forward, that ancient bloodline made one final attempt, and this time it was at Bethlehem. Jesus is born, and when he's born, a king issues a decree of mass murder of male children of age 2. This king is Herod, is an Idumean, an Edomite, a Melech, descendants from Esau's grandson. While Edom descends from Esau himself, it's just a different branch, different roots. But it's different branch, but same roots. So you see, this ancient enmity against the seed of the covenant people marched all the way from the desert, ambushed in Exodus 17 to the manger in Bethlehem. Now, thank you very much for listening to me, and give me a thumb up and kindly subscribe. I will bring such next time. Bye.